Yo, you guys, I'm Emkwan. Welcome to another video here on the channel. Peace and blessings all out there. Today is Sunday. I am typically stuck in traffic. If you follow me on social, you'll know that I usually tweet and snap from the traffic. Now, as you can tell by the title of this video, story time. This is something that I've never done on the channel, but I've kind of done in an indirect way. I've been watching a bunch of really new YouTubers, and one of the things that I've seen, which is a theme that's going on YouTube at the moment, is story time. The way I understand story time is basically someone sharing a personal story of sorts and then sharing the lessons that go alongside that. And it's come at a very interesting time because over the weekend I got a few messages, and to be honest, this is not something that's just happened this weekend. I tend to get this quite regularly now, based on assumptions, and they're not necessarily bad messages, but they're messages where people make assumptions about me personally or about my life. To give you an example, I got a message, a comment posted on one of my YouTube videos, buying my first Rolex. It was a big deal personally for me, and somebody commented that, hey, this guy, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he lives in the UAE, and yeah, buying a Rolex is nothing for him. Assumption that was made by this person, I've never seen them on the channel before, was that I am probably an Arab, probably an Emirati, born and raised in the UAE, which is factually incorrect. But there are small comments that are made like that. There are comments that are made through social, sometimes publicly, sometimes privately, where people assume that the kind of life that I live, the image that I put out, has always been the case. What you see on YouTube, on my channel, and on almost every other YouTuber's channel is not based on reality. They are based on the entire day, small snippets being captured, edited to show what they want to show and then put out there for you to consume. Now, one of the things for me personally is that I try not to share negative experiences, either in a vlog or kind of rants and things like that. Now, I have been known to rant in the past, but I try my best not to include those in the videos. And that's for me personally. I don't have a problem if somebody else does it, but for me personally, I feel that, if you're having a bad day, you're having a bad situation, it's better to deal with it internally than it is to deal with it publicly, unless that's an issue that you need help with publicly. Let me rewind and start with story time. So, 4 years ago, I'd say 5 years ago, I was back in the UK. I was working on a couple of business ideas, in the process of looking for my own place, trying to establish myself, and at that time I was newly married to Bila. We wanted to kind of establish our own independence and be our own selves. Things were okay for a while, and then suddenly they just flipped completely. And I got into a situation where I was trying to do YouTube full-time, and I was trying to work on these other businesses at the same time, and they became very, very difficult for me to manage and to do. And I'm not going to go into the real details of them because it's still, I wouldn't say fresh, but it is kind of fresh in the sense that there may be people watching the videos that were involved at that time, and I don't really want to reopen old wounds. But let's just put it this way, that things were very, very difficult financially. I got into a situation where I was struggling financially, to a point where you would have no idea whatsoever, very, very difficult. Some of the simplest things that I, as a husband, that I, as a the man of the house, so to speak, was struggling with. Things that included just basic shopping. Being able to take care of myself and my wife became extremely very difficult for me. Coupled with that came with the mental stress of trying to find something that would be able to bring in money so that we were stable and were able to be independent ourselves. That had probably the heaviest effect on me personally. I was at a stage where really I was borderline depressive. I got into a situation where, day in, day out, I was trying to try different things. Nothing seemed to be working. And it felt like no matter how hard I was trying, it felt like a noose. The more I moved, the harder and tighter it got. And that was very, very difficult. I remember a situation where there were people around me that were telling me, you've got to get a normal job, stop experimenting with businesses and stop trying to do things yourself. You're in a bad situation, sort your life out, get a normal 9-to-5 job. And I thought about that and I was like, yeah, I think that's, probably the right thing to do. So I started applying for just normal jobs, like literally any job that would come my way. The more I tried, the harder it got because the rejection started getting more and more. I was rejected because I was overqualified, which really, really annoyed me and bugged me. And then I would remove certain things from my CV and try that, and then I would be told that I was underqualified. So then I would kind of mix and match, put more things in there and apply for other jobs around, the same sort of categories. And it just felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall. It got to a point where really I was getting up in the morning, leaving the house, going out there looking for jobs, literally walking, in some cases, shops to shops, businesses to businesses, just to try and sort something out for myself. And it was round about Ramadan time that suddenly something clicked. I heard something from a scholar who mentioned that there'll be points in our lives where no matter how hard we try, nothing will happen. And that's down to our internal kind of energy, and it's down to our internal mind. You need to learn to change your mindset and start thinking positively. At that point in my life, I really was like, well, everything else has failed. I might as well try this. Started to change my mindset away from simply being like, well, I need to change my life to, no, I really need to change my life. And what I mean by that is sometimes you'll get into a situation in our lives where we're aware that things aren't right. We're aware that we need to do things differently to change them, but we lack just that 1% that's needed to kind of rocket us into action. For me personally, I kept on thinking, something will come about, something will happen, this will happen, that will happen. And not realizing the seriousness of the situation that I was in. The second thing I found when I sat down, I made a list of things that I'd been doing. And I realized that there were certain habits that I was creating in terms of, every time I tried to apply for a job, using a certain CV or using a certain style, applying for the same kind of jobs, that they simply weren't working. So I sat down with a pen and paper, quite practically, and I put down ideas in which I could do things differently. Doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results. That's the definition of madness. So what you need to do is you need to find a different way of doing things. That brings me on to point number 3. Point number 3 is move outside of your comfort zone. One of the worst things that can happen when you're in a rut, when you're kind of upset, when you're depressed, when you're desperate to get out of a situation, is that you find in that a certain comfort. You find failure to be a comfort. And when you keep doing that, you're not going to move outside of that rut. You're not going to get that break that you most desperately need. Now, I remember that vividly in the situation where I get an email for a job in the United Arab Emirates. Now, at the time, I didn't specifically apply for a job in the UAE. It just happened to come about, and it came about through my LinkedIn account. I was headhunted, if you like, or kind of searched for this particular role that this company was looking for. I kind of freaked out. I was like, oh my God, do I want to move all the way across half of the world for a job? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my family? And at the time, I still kind of banked on this idea that perhaps what I'm doing, I just need that bit more time. I might make that break. And the funny thing, the irony is the fact that really, in hindsight now, if I had looked back at where I was back in the UK, I don't think I would ever have achieved the kind of success that I have done now here, particularly on YouTube and on social media. Moving outside of your comfort zone is the most important thing that you must try and do when you're in that state. I remember speaking to Bila about this and saying, hey Bila, what do you think about moving away from the UK completely. And I remember us both kind of just looking at each other thinking, this is like a major change. And at that time, there was a death in Bila's family, which was really weighing very heavily on both of us. And I remember it frightening me, like it actually physically frightening me. Here's a country that, you know, is a completely alien place for both of us. You know, you'd go there on holiday, you'd go there to visit, but to actually move there, to move our family, like us as a family unit, to move, you know, our whole life essentially away from a country that we know or we thought we knew, a country that, you know, we thought we'd get support from but really didn't receive, was a really major factor for us. I remember at the time just like constantly kind of avoiding the emails, avoiding the phone calls, until it got to a point where I picked up the phone call, and I remember just raising my hands and just praying and asking God for some kind of sign. Look, if it's good for me, please make it happen. And if it's not good for me, just help this thing leave me. At the same time, I remember applying for a pretty big job. This was a job that came through a recommendation in London, and it was his job for Twitter. 3 people that I met were really excited. They said, "You're just the right person that we're looking for this particular job." So I was at the stage where I had either the UAE job or I had this really good job in London, and I set myself a target. I said to myself, I'm gonna give myself 7 days. If the Twitter job doesn't happen in 7 days, then that's kind of God's sign of telling me you've got to leave. And I waited some more, and I continued to wait, and the job in London just didn't happen. And I did it. I packed my bags, and I remember to this day literally packing 1 full suitcase. That was it, 1 full suitcase, and moving out here. And you know what, to be honest with you, life has never been the same, for all the right reasons, for all the good reasons. Point number 4 that I want to mention is really one of the things that I also learned at that time. One of the things that I was forced to learn at the time was patience. And if you're not patient, things just simply won't fall into place. And, you know, life will force you to learn patience. And the more you fight it, the more you kind of try your best to break out of it, the more it will frustrate you. And it will frustrate you to a point where you will cause damage to yourself and damage to people around you. You know, I keep telling people every time I meet someone who's going through a difficult time, and this really painful episode in my life came about, I realized that it was patience that helped me pull through it. If you're going to take anything away from this story time, take that last bit, patience. Life is such that sometimes you go to the lowest point that you think is possible, and then you're at the highest point, and it just is a continuous cycle. So I never expect things to continue to be the same. I never expect things to always be perfect. You know, ultimately, every time you go through a difficult testing time, it's a chance for you to learn, and it's a chance for you to grow. And finally, it's a chance for you to share those experiences with others who might be going through equally difficult times. And that's it, guys. I hope this has given you some kind of insight, a more personal insight to how life was before we came out here to the UAE. Life is much better, alhamdulillah. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up, leave your comment down below, and if you think this can help someone, please share it on social or with your friends and family. Thank you so very much for watching up to this point if you have been. I will see you in the next video on Wednesday. Until then, it's been my pleasure. I'm Emkwan. Peace and blessings.